My build is a DNR coupe, and I've used the latest version of their seat, which has an inner shell and outer shells. And I positioned them in the car with the back as low as possible, the seat angled to give you as much headroom as possible, which elevates the front. And they're also over close to the console and angled to match the side of the console, which then gives your feet more room by putting them down into the footwell and staying away from the wheel well that comes in on the side. The tilting of the front has given me some room underneath here. I built a panel for the front and around the side, and a set of switches on here. And if you notice, the seats are power. They move front and back just like any other power seat. And also, you can hear the motor running in there, and if you look close, you'll see the upholstery on the backrests start to move out. There it goes. And what's happening is I have power lumbar support in there, which is basically just an airbag in the back of the seat, and that inflates by way of an air pump and pushes against your backrest and gives you extra lumbar support. The back of the bag pushes against the outside shell, and the inside, of course, comes through a hole in the inner shell and pushes against the back of the upholstery. These seats bolt in with 4 bolts. I have them in the corners and in the back. And you notice there's a hole in the floor here in the bottom of the seat. That's so I can reach in there and disconnect the plug, which disconnects the switches from the motor. The switches come with the seat. The motor stays on the rails that are on the floor. So I'll take those apart and show you how that goes. This is the seat rail mechanism. These slides here came out of a Jeep Wrangler, and they were a manual device, but I took all the manual operation off so it wouldn't lock up. They just act as slide rails now. And I put a strap across the back with holes to mount the seat on, some standoffs up on the front with a strap on here, and I can bolt the seat down to these two. And then this little bridge over here is 1/2-inch square steel with some weld nuts on it to support the motor drive, and out back little 1/4-inch round stock and a tab to support the back of the motor, so the motor assembly mounts with just 3 bolts. Now here's the motor assembly, and you can see this was a power window unit, and it used to have 4 mounting tabs, but I cut these off so they'd clear underneath the bottom. I took the spring off, the spring that windows use, and I took off the thing that it springs against, but we don't need that. On the other side over here, what I did, I trimmed off all the excess that I didn't need, used some of it to make an arm, and I put 3 mounting holes on here to give it 4 inches, 5 inches, and 6 inches of travel. I found out that the 5-inch travel is adequate for what I need. And I mounted 2 limit switches on here and put little sheet metal trippers. You can bend the trippers to contact the switch and make it work where you want it to. And the switches are from McMaster Car. They're miniature switches. Instead of using screws to hold them down, I used a couple pieces of coat hanger wire welded into a steel plate, and underneath it is a old piece of credit card plastic used as an insulator so I wouldn't get any shorting on the wires. And the piece on the top is just a black ABS 110-24 screw holding it down, and it secures the switches very nicely. The wiring on this, the switches are there to prevent you from accidentally having the button pushed. Say your fat wallet falls down there and all the money pushes against the switch and you don't know it, and you don't want to burn your motor up or blow a fuse, so it gets to the end of travel and it shuts the power off. So I have this is the half of the connector. It's Casper's Electronics connectors. They're really nice connectors. And I have power and ground come in through here, goes to the switch. Switch comes back out here, goes to the normally closed on the single pole double throw switches. The common goes to the motor. The normally open is connected to a ground. So when you get the end of the travel, it connects that side of the motor to ground, which is what you need to move it the other way, and it can't go anything but the other direction. So it's a simple circuit. Everything works just fine. Here's the unit bolted to the frame, and the wires run through and secured. And you notice on the top here I have an FRP board I made up. That's just to keep all these wires, any wires from getting entangled with anything that might be moving underneath here. That's what the unit looks like, all assembled, ready to mount to the floor. This is the bottom of the driver's seat, and you can see where I have the air pump mounted, and a nice bracket on the side. The line, the plastic line, is secured along here, and it runs from the switch. And the other part of the switch goes around and runs up through a nice little groove in here to keep it protected from being close to the floor, and goes up into the back and goes to the airbag that's underneath the back part of the shell. And this is the metal skirt I made that bolts down on here, and it holds the switch assembly. This is how the seat rail is located underneath the bottom of the seat. You can see the very tight clearances for all of the switches and wires and things. And over here there's a very tight fit between the air pump and all the bracketry to get all of everything in place. But it all fits. The back of the seat is notched to fit the seat rails and keep the seat as low as possible to the ground. In order to get the seats as low to the floor as possible, I cut a little steel bracing out of the floor, but I thought I'd better replace it because the floor was getting a little shaky, a little wobbly, and you push on it, it would go. So I put some half-inch square back in again to stiffen things up, and then these are the mounting points for my seat rails. This tab over here, remember I had 3 holes for a 4-inch, 5-inch, and 6 inches of travel, and I'm going to end up using the one in the middle. I just wanted to be prepared for anything. There's the mechanism mounted to the floor. You can see the plug sits on top of the shield. And I taped the positive and negative, the power and the ground, to the brace to keep them out of the way. And it's all ready for the seat to be bolted down on top. But before I bolt the seat down, I have to put this front shield on. When this goes on here to hide the motor, you can see the back corner also hides the attaching bolt. So you have to attach this after you put the rails down, otherwise you couldn't mount it. You have to put this on before you put the seat on, because you need to get to the screws that mount it on, which are just flatheads that go down through the top here and screw in there. So I'll attach that, and then I'll be ready to mount the seat. Okay, all ready to go. Now I can lower the seat down in place, put the bolts in, connect the plug, and everything is ready. Okay, my temporary power supply is connected. And there's my driver's seat powered also. And